Signal Sciences secures the most important web applications, APIs, and microservices of the world's leading companies, protecting over 7,500 applications and 150 billion production requests per week. Signal Sciences Next-Gen WAF and RASP help companies increase security and maintain site reliability without sacrificing velocity, all at the lowest total cost of ownership. Signal Sciences' patented technology protects any application against any attack, with integrations into any DevOps toolchain. Signal Sciences. Demand more from your WAF. Learn more at signalsciences.com/PSW. Introducing the new DigiCert. As the leading provider of high-assurance SSL, TLS, and PKI certificates, DigiCert is all about improving security across the web and IoT. DigiCert is committed to helping customers and partners successfully deploy identity, authentication, and encryption solutions. They'll even help you figure out which certificate you need to secure your web domains, apps, devices, and more. Check out the Cert Wizard tool under the SSL tab on digicert.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. I want to remind everyone we're going to be at Black Hat and DEF CON. So here's the rundown. First and foremost, as you see on the screen, we will have the Cyber Hero Adventures comic book that we are sponsoring. Gary Berman is the author of that. He's been on 2 of our shows on the network, so make sure you check out the interviews on Paul's Security Weekly and Business Security Weekly with Gary.
Do we get to make cameos?
I don't know. I haven't asked yet. I don't know if he's going to include us or not.
Because that would be epic.
I was trying not to ask, but maybe like drop subtle hints.
Yeah.
Like, hey, is one of your characters named Paul? One of your characters do a podcast? Anyway, so that will be there. It will also be distributed at Logarithm's booth in the vendor area at Black Hat. Logarithm actually has an advertisement in it and is sponsoring that and be giving away there. Or you can come to the pool area at Mandalay Bay. We'll have that, and we'll have Gary there, tied up to a chair. I make it sound like we'll have Gary there, trapped in a cage or something. I don't know. No, he'll be there.
Dunk tank.
Dunk tank. He'll be there in some capacity for certain times. Then in the booth at Black Hat, we're doing some analyst briefings where we are the analysts actually in the briefings, so we can learn about security vendors, select security vendors.
So you'll be analysts wearing briefs.
Yes.
Perfect.
And we'll be doing interviews. Some of those will be paid, sponsored interviews that we're doing with select companies. And then we have an ongoing free interview series that is trivia. Doug White and I are developing all brand new trivia questions. Ooh. No more hacker movie trivia, no more history of malware trivia, no more famous hackers trivia. We're not asking those questions ever again. We have all new trivia questions. It's looking like Star Wars, Star Trek, technology, and security.
How about other sci-fi movies as well?
That's what talk to Doug. Doug was like, I got this. He's like, these are the cat. I'm like, what? He's like, these are the cat. I'm like, okay, dude, like I got it. He's like, now just help me write the questions. Yes, sir. So Doug will primarily be doing those, and it's gonna be awesome. There's like 5 easy questions, 5 hard questions. We have hints, funny hints for every question. It's gonna be great. Okay, then. At Caesars, we'll be in the pool area again. We are going to be recording shows there, probably doing some more trivia. And we'll be in the vendor area at DEF CON selling shot glasses, computer glasses, and T-shirts. I think that's it.
Do you have new designs for the T-shirt?
I believe the design that we have this year is one design, barring whatever else we might have left over from previous things that we're going to do. We have tote bags, which I think will be free. I don't know. We have tote bags. If you want to give me money for them, that's fine. Or other than that, they're free. Yeah, donation. We have sunscreen, branded sunscreen, suntan lotion, if you will. And then the T-shirts, Larry, are male and female. Hack naked shirts with the definition on the back. Okay. So both the male and the female are on the front. That's the design.
It's important to have the definition.
Yes, the definition is very important. I brought that back. I somehow got left off some T-shirt orders. We brought it back.
Good.
Anyway, I'm now here with Chris Dale, along with Larry and Jeff, to talk about pen testing and intelligence gathering. Chris, welcome.
Hey, man. Thank you very much. Nice to see you.
So, Chris, tell our listeners a little bit about your background.
All right, cool. So, yeah, I'm from Norway, and I do penetration testing. I manage a team of about 5 pen testers, and I also manage a team of incident responders. Background is basically system development. That's what got me started, and IT operations, and I pivoted into security management, which slowly killed me inside. Gave that up for a consultancy, and here I am doing a business, having fun. Also, a SaaS instructor, so I travel the world, get to meet a lot of cool people, and having good time in security business right now.
So, Chris, what are you teaching for SANS nowadays?
I'm teaching the hacking techniques, incident response, and exploits class.
So 504.
Yes.
504, yep.
Fun stuff.
It's awesome, man.
So, Chris, with pen testing, right? You had some issues with the process and the the expected outcomes of the pen test. Tell us about some of those issues and how you have worked to create a great kind of framework, I would call it, for making some pen tests better for customers.
Yeah, so I started out always wanting to get into pen testing and so on, but working as a CISO, I had to contract pen testers from external companies, and the thing was that they did not live up to my expectancies ever. I had one pen test from a UK company, and they actually did a really solid job. But as like a manager, I felt that pen testing did not work out as I thought it would be. And then going into consultancy and doing pen testing full time, I realized that there's a bunch of challenges from the pen testing side that I wanted to address and that I want to solve. And basically, that's where I'm coming from today. That's the things I want to try to solve and help people get higher value pen tests.
And so we talked about open source intelligence gathering, or really the reconnaissance phase, I should call it, of the pen test. When you looked at that process, what were some of the things that you noticed might be problematic?
So the thing is that most companies, they are very biased when it comes to what their assets are, what their attack surface is, and basically how hackers operate today. So companies alone are not good enough to tell pen testers what they expect to be the scope of a pen test. And when the pen testers meet up with the clients, they kind of go into meetings and they try to discuss what the scope should be and so on. And it can be a tiresome process. And for pen testers, it can be quite hard to properly understand what the scope is. And we see scope creeping a whole lot, new assets being suddenly discovered. And at the end of the day, both the client, they're not properly covered in terms of risk. They don't properly know their risk picture, and also for the pen testers, it's kind of awkward not having the full understanding of what the scope should be and how much time you should use. And there's a lot of stress when you want to go down a rabbit hole, for example. You want to discover if there's anything here more to be discovered, and how much time do you have remaining, how much time should you be spending on this particular topic, this particular rabbit hole, and so on. So the reconnaissance is something that we definitely should look at more. I don't just think that it deserves to be fully automated, which some companies are trying to market today. It can be semi-automated, but definitely we need pen testers' eyes on the problems and help customers get some return early on in the pen test engagement before we start actually exploiting things.
Now, Chris, this reconnaissance phase, is this something companies can do themselves?
Oh, definitely. Companies that actually do their own reconnaissance are among the better companies that we work against. I mean, for me, pen testing has become sort of dull, sort of boring at times, because you keep finding the same stupid mistakes that have been repeated for so many years. If companies knew their own assets in a much better detail, if they actually went about and did their own asset inventory and knew which systems they were governing and so on, it would have made up of a much better world, much better security. Start with the basics. Don't go hardcore into next generation products and so on. Just start with the basics. Just simple, good, solid, old school IT operations, and we'll go a far way with that.
Now, Chris, what are some of the tools and techniques that you recommend that pen testers and companies can do to get an accurate footprint of their exposed assets, if you will?
So definitely do some open source intelligence. That's a good start. For companies themselves, they probably have some kind of idea what types of assets they have and are governing today, but they should definitely look at search engines and see if they can find what types of assets we can find using public information, open source intelligence, as mentioned. But definitely they should look at other sources as well. I mean, we very often find websites that have splash pages, or they have like a 404 or a 403 not authorized. And all of these systems that are online are actually part of the attack surface of the attackers. I always say that bad guys, they break in, at least in bug bounties, it's very much dominant. We break in using the path least traveled. So the systems that are hard to discover but are actually online are the systems that we're breaking into. So definitely organizations, they should dump their DNS configurations and so on to know about what they actually have out there that is known about. But they should also do their own scanning, their own reconnaissance, and see when they find these systems that are just hosting some kind of splash page, they should learn about what type of application is hosted here. And there is no security by obscurity when it comes to this, because we're using content enumeration, trying to discover what is actually hosted behind this. We're using word lists that we've created customly for every single client. For example, we use Cool to enumerate all the different web pages and create word lists to help us better discover what type of contents are out there on clients' websites.
It sounds like Keith's technical segment that he did, that he applies to bug bounties.
Yeah.
And
right.
What he'll find is that some of the more open bug bounties that let you do this level of reconnaissance, the steps are pretty similar, right? We enumerate via the web and Google searches. We do some DNS reconnaissance as well. And then essentially, I mean, you're running an HTTP screenshotting tool to tell you what's running behind every website. Is that usually the first step in the process, Chris?
Definitely. The HTTP screenshotting tools are awesome, especially coming from the inside. I mean, if they start on the inside, learning about which applications they're hosting on the inside, it might be too much and too daunting to even approach. There might be several hundred websites and systems that are being hosted, and the screenshotting tools really helps us in grasping which systems we should address first.
Now, Chris, what HTTP screenshotting tool is the most popular and most functional today? I know I had actually started that research years ago, but I think there's a lot better tools out there today.
No, I'm using Eyewitness myself. It has some good export functionality to export into taking imports from Nmap even. Has a good JS Phantom implementation. Even works for RDP and other services as well, VNC and so on. So I'm using Eyewitness myself.
That's awesome.
Also, other
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yo, go ahead.
I'm curious and humor an old man who used to do this a very long time ago. Is there any element...
Don't worry. We humor old men all the time, Jeff. Paul's here.
Thank you. That's true. And Jack occasionally.
Yes.
Is there any element of recon that you do that is in advance of, in addition to, or is something other than simply looking for the technology that might be out there that's reachable in one way or another? In other words, do you try to learn who or what the business is, what they're about, what they might care about in terms of security, who the people are, who the executives are, as potential targets, or for maybe phishing attacks later on, Can you describe what, if anything, is done in terms of recon? Because when I used to do recon, it was almost exclusively we didn't have Google back then. We would go out and learn about the company and learn what they were doing and learn what they were about and try to get a feel for what we were going after. So I'm just curious.
Oh, definitely. Great question. We do a bunch of different things, and I love your approach to the question, because we look at so much more than just the regular things that we know about in Recon. We look at, for example, the certificate transparency logs from that were required to put up and publish which certificates, HTTPS and SSL certificates that we have online. We're looking at those logs, learning about which systems might have been provisioned lately, for example. We have a script that harvests all employees of LinkedIn. I know there are tools that does this today, such as the Harvester and others, which will try to go through all employees and harvest who is actually employed at an organization. Recon tries to do this, among other things. But we also flag users inside of these. If we flag the organization's users in terms of who is a part of the management team, who is a part of the IT team. I mean, IT people, they're susceptible of having information on Stack Overflow, on GitHub that might be revealing. Management team is susceptible of being phished, and they're much more susceptible for those types of attacks. Customer service, we flagged on those types of guys. People managing inboxes and like public email, public social media is a huge part of our pen tests very often. I mean, in terms of risk, if we can take over a Twitter account that has 150,000 followers with a password of election 2017, I'm not just making this up, but if we can take over a Twitter account, that risk is probably equal to someone hacking into a web server. So we're looking at a bunch of different things. We're looking at, for example, we want to tell the customer about their mobile applications, which software they have running on Android, iPhone, Blackberries, Windows phones, and so on. We want to tell them about things that have already been leaked, like things such as source code reveals. We've seen passwords being revealed on GitHubs. We've seen people having a backup. So just by simply doing open source reconnaissance, we found copies of their SQL databases online, which basically concludes the pen test before we even started doing any exploitation, right?
I was going to ask a follow-up. I'm sorry, I was going to ask a follow-up question. If you do, or what is the equivalent these days? One of the things that we used to do in terms of sort of the open source, we didn't call it back then, but we would look at Bug Track, Firewall Digest, various product vendors that would have basically websites set up to ask questions, and people would very often, if you could identify what company they were working for, you might find out what firewalls they had, what kind of security devices, what kind of network gear, what database they were using, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
Is there that type of equivalent open sourced investigations these days?
Yeah. So honestly, I do appreciate learning the fact which type of vendor they're using for their equipment, especially their security products. Most of the time, it's easy to discover just by actually interacting with the services. But if everything comes down to what technology they're actually using, we'll use, for the most part, LinkedIn to just see what type of skills people have assigned to their profiles and so on, and we'll make assumptions. But honestly, though, if we need to learn about our customers' equipment, most of my customers, they are very open to actually having a crystal box type of pen test, where we'll simply ask them, look, we ran into a problem, we're being blocked by some kind of WAF functionality, for example. What type of product are you using so we can better circumvent that product? Or we might even ask them to disable the product for us. It's not like we're banking on a bunch of zero-day vulnerabilities that will target on their specific infrastructure, especially not on the external side of things. Honestly, when it comes to the external side of things, a lot of customers are more or less, they're quite hardened on their exterior, but once you kind of get one step inside of the organization, for example, you misuse users' credentials that might have been stolen. The moment we get in through password spreading, for example, it's much more weaker and more insecure. It's also one of the things we provide our customers. We're banking on a database of 4.5 billion usernames and passwords. Is it a bunch of usernames and passwords even? And we provide these usernames and passwords to our clients before we start the engagement. We don't reveal the passwords, but we tell them, look, all of these users have actually been compromised before, and they're leaked online. And you guys should probably patch or change these users, make sure that they don't have a similar password before we start our engagement, because if not, it's probably going to be an easier way in.
Now, Chris, I wanted to ask you, when you said you identify source code that's leaked, what's the best way for you as a tester and both companies to determine if source code has leaked?
So we go through their, for example, if they have mobile applications, we try to find their package names, for example, which is very easily revealed on, for example, Play Store. We search through a bunch of different code searching engines to look for keywords mentioning their company name, and we, I would say, quickly browse through what we can find. We don't spend extensive time on this, because we want to make the reconnaissance phase not take up too much time, but we definitely use code searching engines to try to reveal if this specific company name has been mentioned in any code that we can find, and then we browse, and then we find the respective user account that's been used. We look at other projects, other commits from this user, and we see what it's all about, if there's any sensitive information. And in fact, in one engagement, we found this was for a contractor for a political party in Norway. We found one of the consultants, they had on their own technical IT blog. So this guy was blogging on technical matters regarding IBM connections and how to patch, how to make it secure, and so on. On his own blog, he had put up a screenshot of how he would run several different command line arguments to make IBM connections patch. And one of the screenshots actually had the password censored. So the password is actually it was blanked out, but he forgot. So he didn't blank out every single piece of the characters. So there was like the top of the first character, the bottom of the third character, and the last 4 characters was actually revealing a bit of the top and the bottom of the characters themselves. And this allowed us to actually create a little word list of all potential passwords that the admin password could be, and this was one of the ways we broke into that organization.
That's awesome.
I love when companies don't do appropriate PDF censoring, masking, whichever. And there were times recently when they went and blacked out portions of the document in the PDF. And sure, there's the black bar over it, so you go and highlight the entire contents, control copy, go into a text document, control paste, and there's the text that was behind the black box.
That's old school.
Yes, and it works. It works.
I'm writing a tool right now that is I'm writing this tool because I actually fell into the pit myself. I made a mistake. We distributed a report, a pen test report, in doc format, so in Word format.
So mistake number 1, right?
Yes. So basically, the customer went into so he distributed the report internally. One of the IT technicians went into the report, read the report, and he started going through all our revision history.
Oh.
And he basically went through every single change, everything how we wrote the report. And luckily, though, we didn't write anything that could be bad, but still, it was.
And of course, you never reuse content from a previous report or another customer.
For example, so the tool I'm writing right now in PowerShell is a tool that will basically use. It takes, for example, say you are using Foca to download every single spreadsheet, Word document, PowerPoint, and so on. And my tool will basically go through this and not only extract metadata, which is what Foca does, but my tool will go through the revision history and see if there's any revision history, first of all, and flag down if there's anything that should be marked as potentially sensitive, so we can get eyes on that problem really quickly.
I like Chris's pronunciation of Foca better. Fucka.
How do you pronounce it?
Foca. You pronounced it fucka, and yes,
that's awesome.
That's kind of what it does.
I'm teaching in the Middle East, man. I gotta be careful with my pronunciation.
That's right. So,
Foca.
Now you also mentioned reverse image searches. How do those play into doing reconnaissance for a pen test?
So I love the reverse image searches because it usually reveals additional systems that are not hosted within an IP address, a subnet. It reveals systems that are otherwise hard to find. So what we do is that we take pictures from the customer, for example, their logo, their business partner's logo. So not business partners, but their daughter companies and so on, which is not a partner for reconnaissance. But we take their data that is very branded towards their company, and we look through, for example, Google's image search to see if we can find other additional systems that are mentioning this specific type of image or something similar. And this sometimes reveals more information for us.
Oh, so I thought you were using like TinEye or something, which I guess could also reveal some interesting results, perhaps.
Not familiar with TinEye. What does it do?
TinEye is a reverse image search. So if you've got a picture that shows up on like Facebook or something like, you can upload that there, and it will find all the locations where it has been used previously.
Yes.
So similar types of things. You could potentially use that to identify partners.
Yeah, but Chris was describing how he used a Google image search. Well, you could run that through TinEye too. That may give you even more results.
TinEye, last I remember, has a browser plugin. It's been a while since I've used a browser plugin.
Gotcha.
So you can image, right click, TinEye search, done, boom.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking at their web page right now, so I'm definitely adding that to our recon process.
There you go.
Yeah, gotta love that. Everybody grows.
That's right.
Yes.
Chris, you also said you use URL shorteners. Is that I can take my target company's domain and run it through a URL shortener and find all the URLs that have been shortened from that domain, or is it something different?
So the thing is, we commonly use URL shorteners to make a link short to share with our colleagues or maybe some for marketing, whatever, right? But these URLs that you're shortening can actually be brute forced and revealed to anyone looking. So archive.org, they have a team called URL team. They've actually started brute forcing common tiny URL and so on. They're brute forcing URL shortener services to see what type of information they're holding. And a friend of mine, a guy I just recently hired to the company actually, he wrote a tool that basically allows you to parse their dumps and look to see if there's any URL shortener service that first of all has been parsed by archive.org that has any information regarding your targets.
That's pretty awesome.
You can go through and look for your company name, for example, or your domains, whatever, and you will likely find that there are some URLs that have been shortened, revealing more functionality within a web application, for example. It might reveal subdomains that you previously haven't found. In some cases, you will see bad guys actually using URL shorteners to share information, and you will find exploits actually live just by going through URL shortener information. So it's been somewhat valuable. It's an added thing we have in our recon process. But it's very fun looking at, for example, every single web page in Norway who has a mention of, for example, etc password, who has a mention of SQL, SQL, like an injection type of strings in it. And you will find a bunch of vulnerable systems just by looking at URL shortener URLs that have been brute forced, and you can actually go to them and see what they're all about.
And now you also are looking at certificates as well, and specifically the certificate transparency log?
Yeah, so this is mistake number 2, Larry. I actually got pwned this way.
This is how we learn.
Yes.
This is how I got my start. I got pwned.
Same guy that I hired, he pwned me. Basically, I was running a pen test with my team, and I created a new domain for doing cross-site scripting. And I needed to have HTTPS to make this phishing and cross-site scripting attack work properly. So I, of course, went and got me a Let's Encrypt certificates, and I got SSL running on my web server. I set up my clone web page. Everything was looking good. I'm ready to push my attack out there. And like 5 minutes after that, I get a direct message on Twitter, and basically an emoticon going like, "What is this?" and the link to my new, fresh founded domain
from somebody you'd never spoken with on Twitter before.
More or less. And I'm like, how the hell did you find this? Because this domain actually contained my customer name in it. So I had created a domain like www.customername.no.netsecurity.no, for example, right? And I actually did an OPSEC leak there where I revealed which customer I'm currently working with, and it even had process scripting in its name, XSS in its name. So it's like, it's not what I want to have happening. I don't want to leak who I'm working for at any given moment, especially not in terms of a specific vulnerability.
Yeah.
Yep. We all make mistakes. We all learn from the mistakes.
Hell yeah.
And that's the best way to move forward. And actually talking about these makes us all better.
Through failure comes success, my friend.
Yes.
And so what was it about the certificate? Something about when you register a certificate, something is public that allowed him to ascertain that information?
Yeah, so I think it's coming from Google and a couple of other vendors, but they're encouraging certificates companies to publish which domains they're issuing certificates for, so you can verify that these certificates are actually issued by the provider that they have been issued from. And this is actually fully transparent, so you can go look through these logs on, for example, cert.sh, crt.sh. You can look at them through Google's own transparency log, and you can actually figure out which domains have been issued an SSL certificate in the past time. Even revoked certificates and expired certificates, giving you more intelligence on the company. And if you look at this today, and you look at, for example, government companies, if you look at the things they're issuing SSL on today, it's crazy. People are putting up test systems, staging systems, things that should not be online, but they need to have SSL on it, and they put it online just for testing. It might have an obscure DNS name and an obscure domain name, but they put it up online, imagining no one will find it. But it's just there 5 minutes later in the logs, and you can go pen test on that immediately, and probably you will find. This is where you will find a bunch of sensitive information today.
Yay! Scraping for the win.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jeff, more questions?
So it sounds like a variation of security through obscurity.
Yeah.
Well, let's just do telnet on a high port. Nobody will ever find it.
Yes.
Well, yeah, kind of. So we do a bunch of DNS enumerations. So when we do our reconnaissance phase, we use a lot of specialized word lists. We use word lists that are for Norwegian language, of specific languages of those countries we're testing against, and so on. But I guess the customers believe that, look, if I put this in my DNS, if I put this on my SSL, and it has like this really obscure name, people are probably not going to find it immediately. And I'm just going to do some testing. I'm just going to put the system online, make sure that it works for the first 5 days, for example, and then I'm going to put it offline again. But that's all the time someone needs to actually break into the system.
Now, Chris, did you happen to look into Domain Tools Iris when we're talking about DNS reconnaissance?
You were mentioning that. I have been looking at some different vendors. I haven't looked at them for the moment, but it's definitely a service that is very useful for companies to be aware of and even subscribe to actually just know about when someone is actually just putting out a new domain name, and it appears in the logs.
The reason I mention it is I think it's very complementary to the wordless brute forcing. In that you don't have to go through that step. That Domain Tools has partners actually they work with that can give you the entire history of a particular domain, including subdomains. In other words, some sensor somewhere on the internet has observed a client resolving this particular domain name while they've actually logged that, so it can pick up on subdomains within your target company that you may or may not have guessed via a word list, but because a sensor observed that somewhere, it ends up in Domain Tools too. And Domain Tools is a sponsor, but I think this particular aspect of their product is pertinent to this conversation about doing reconnaissance, both as a pen tester and internally, to know that. What I also like about it is you can pivot off of that data. So as you, Chris, discover domain names and maybe different domain names that are associated with the organization, you can then go to the Iris tool and it'll let you pivot off of a phone number, an email address, a name, an address, and see what other domains may have been registered, and that can be maybe additional information that you might have collected through those other means.
Right, I hear it. Sounds like a good idea, as long as you don't only rely on that system, that service. Yeah. Because most of my customers, they don't rely on only one top-level domain. They have multiple domain names that have their respective DNS names, subdomains even, and most of the time, yeah, I love the idea, but you definitely need a pen tester's eyes on the problem, because what I'm seeing now is that I'm not going to mention company names, but people are trying to commercialize this like full-on recon as a service type of thing to basically have a vulnerability scan and a full recon phase done without having the need of a pen test type of thing.
No, I agree, and I'm going to tell you exactly why I agree. Because when you do any kind of DNS recon for an organization, or you've got a list of potential HTTP servers in that environment that you've collected from multiple sources, you're going to go screenshot those, you're going to have a list of domain names. Someone has to go through that list and determine what's interesting.
Yes.
And that's something that you can't, I mean, sure, you can write an artificial intelligence algorithm, but no, there is no supplement for someone who can observe and make human decisions, that has experience, that can say, yeah, that like remote dot, or that's a bad example, but like, you know, like that domain name, for whatever reason, it's just human intuition. Looks like I should go there and see what's on.
I take this back to what I had to do many years ago in healthcare. I was the guy that was responsible for reviewing all the logs for WebSense to figure out when people were surfing for porn and when they weren't. And there was thousands of things that would trigger for porn every day. And a lot of it was, I could tell by looking at the URL, pop-up ad, pop-up ad, pop-up ad, banner, banner, pop-up porn. Just because human intelligence.
Because you've got a lot of intelligence on
porn
sites, Larry.
So the more we can bring into our recon, the better. The thing is, with our recon, we kind of split it up from so the pen test methodology is basically reconnaissance and then discovery and then exploitation, right? So what we do is that we actually deliver reconnaissance as its own little mini delivery. So the customer only purchases a reconnaissance phase, so we can actually agree on what they need to have pen tests before it starts, and we can give a fixed price on their pen tests instead of having this whole cloud of uncertainty around us. But I love bringing in services like that, but we have to keep the reconnaissance a bit lean, not too much costs involved, because the reconnaissance is meant, for us at least, is meant to be like a service that gives the customer an indication of what needs to be pen tested right now, like what is actually their attack surface right now, what do they need to have covered. So definitely I'm looking into that service for our
Chris,
operations.
For DNS brute forcing, what are some of the better tools of choice?
So we have our own little custom tool that we created, because we used to use Fierce and DNS Enum, both part of the Kali distribution. But they're kind of lackluster when it comes to some functionality like UTF-8 characters and more. So we have our own little script developed to do this brute force for us, to find, so for example, when we find domains in a different subdomain, we do some more enumeration on that. But to mention two good tools that everyone can use for free, it's Fierce and DNS Enum. And paired with some good word lists, especially custom word lists that you create based on the information you find in PDFs and Word documents and so on, and the websites. It gives you, for very little effort, it gives you so much attack surface that you can go on.
So DNS Recon, to plug Carlos's tool.
Yeah, so that's not Carlos's tool is DNS Recon.
Yep.
And DNS Enum and Fierce are two other tools.
Yep.
And then to complete the chain, right? To fuel some of those word lists, it's Foca, which will download you the PDFs and Word documents right from a site.
Yep.
And then Sool to parse those and get your word lists. Does Sool parse PDFs and Word documents? It's been some time since I used some of these tools.
Right, exactly.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Jeff, and there was one tool that I forgot to star on GitHub that I used this week on a pen test to pull up additional domains from wildcard certs and so forth.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, and I can't remember. It starts with a C, and I'll find it.
Domains from wildcard certs.
Yes, I'll
in
find.
the meantime,
I'll find that in the next. Jeff's got a comment.
Jeff, and then 5 questions.
And then I will find that tool.
Well, I've been stewing a little bit because I'm still thinking about my past and when I used to do this, and I just want clarification, if there is such a thing. I think when I used to do what I called recon, that was an exercise in, I think, what we call more open source collection or OSINT these days. In other words, I wasn't touching any of the client's resources, electronically in any way, shape, or form. It was all the, what can I find out about them just by kind of looking around, and that's what I called recon. And then when we had sort of a good idea of what we were going to look at, we negotiated, maybe IP space or whatever that we were going to target. Then we started doing probing or discovery, and to me, it's two different activities. And yet and it may be just as clear in your mind, but it seems like you've been talking a little bit back and forth. Sometimes you're probing and touching and doing some form of scanning versus the things that you're collecting from external sources.
We're not. It's a great insight, but we're not only doing passive. We are actually touching the systems. We are actually doing full-on content enumeration. We're actually probing the systems. We're scanning all ports, TCP at least, and we're actually learning fully what we believe to be the attack surface. And then this is coming from basically, I'm in belief of this is what the bad guys are already doing. So why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we be able to interact with the systems and actually learn about the systems? So, of course, in the contracts, they have a statement saying that, look, we're actually going to touch your systems, and we're not being liable for any damages that could occur, but we're actually going on your systems to learn about the size of things. So, say, for example, I'm going to price up the cost of doing a pen test on a web application. I need to know how much functionality this web application provides. I need to know which other functionality that might be hidden there. I actually need to do a discovery and scanning phase as part of my early engagement. And this is the thing that we're splitting away from the pen test. We're delivering this as part of a separate engagement, while when the customer hires us, we actually go into exploitation and verification.
Yeah, and I guess full disclosure, we used to do a lot of our recon, even before we went under contract, because we were trying to scope the engagement, and that may very well have included, port scanning and IP scanning, because heck, back in those days, nobody knew you were doing it, and you could kind of do it to whomever you want. I think like maybe 1 out of 500 companies that we ever approached or were talking to ever said, "Hey, you're scanning us. Stop that." And we said, "Good for them." Yeah.
So, Chris,
we gotta touch them. We gotta touch them to learn about what they're all about. So, in my opinion, we're the good guys. We gotta play with the same cards as the bad guys are playing with.
So, I just want to mention that tool. It is CTFR, Charlie Tango Foxtrot Romeo. CTFR by Una Piba Geek, and I'll put that in the show notes. It's on GitHub. It is abusing certificate transparency logs for getting HTTPS website subdomains. I actually used that this week on a pen test, and it was actually quite fruitful.
That's awesome. I love to see the tool evolution since I've been pen testing. Some things have stayed the same.
I love to see that there's tools.
Yes. Tools to automate this stuff is awesome. I like all of the tips that we discussed today. Chris, are you ready to play 5 questions with Security Weekly?
Holy crap. I don't know. Let's go for it.
Alrighty. 3 words to describe yourself.
Happy hacker geek.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Probably a USB cable.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Hacking for Good.
In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
Without knowing what that implies, I'm probably going to go second just to cop up, like, feel out the game. Yeah.
That's very well put.
I can confirm.
Yeah. Choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead, living, or otherwise.
Celebrity, wow. So I'm the worst with celebrities. I'm not familiar with American pop culture, but
they can be Norwegian celebrities. They
don't have to be American.
Yeah,
they can be from history.
We can Google.
Alan Turing and Grace Hopper.
There you go.
Whoa.
Oh, Chris, thank you so much for appearing on Paul's Security Weekly.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
And with that, we'll take a short break, come back with the security news for this week. Stay tuned, don't go anywhere.